Hello everyone, my name is Karina. I go by Kartsy on social media, and welcome to the first episode of the Scooby Doo 60s AU project. In this series, I'll be analyzing the designs of the iconic characters of Scooby Doo and bringing them to life using history and some of my best friends. Today, we will be focusing on the character Velma Dinkley and seeing how we can dissect her design and bring it to reality using my friend Amantia as the model. After doing some research into the development of the cartoon, I discovered that initially Scooby Doo was called the Mystery Five and followed along with a group of kids and their dog, of course, who had a band actually. And so in between gigs, they would go off and solve mysteries. Originally, Velma was named Linda, which I find very, very odd and kind of stereotypical at the time. She wore yellow instead of her signature orange. She had a necklace, and also she was missing her glasses. So when you look at the design, it really feels like a different Velma, if that makes any sense. Her character is inspired by the character Zelda Gilroy from The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. So this is a show that aired between 1959 to 1963. And one thing I actually find really interesting is how close the name Velma is to Zelda. Kind of see where they took it from there. But not only is there a name similarity, there's also a personality similarity, because when you look at some of the scenes of Zelda, you can feel how it feels like Velma in a way.
We're victims of propinquity.
What's that?
Propinquity. Nearness, closeness. Sigafoose and Wembling of Harvard, in a study of 2,900 married couples, proved that in 87% of the cases, the couples first fell in love because of propinquity.
Here it is, Phosphorus pyrifera.
Like, speak English.
A phosphorus glowing seaweed found only in the area known as the graveyard of ships.
According to the actress Sheila Carell in an interview with Archive of American Television, she states, "Zelda Gilroy is the smartest girl in the room, the city, and probably the world. She could understand everything. She could invent everything. She had a very strong will." But remember, we hadn't quite gotten into feminism yet. So even though she was the smartest girl and really the only girl on television at the time who was allowed to be really brilliant, who didn't have to play dumb, who didn't have to really play second fiddle, everything she wanted for Dobie. She wanted him to run for the Senate. She wanted him to be class president, and she would make it happen. She would be his campaign consultant. She would do all the stuff, but he would. As we recognized at the time, no girls were being student body presidents. So it would have to be him, and she would be the power behind the throne. Since Zelda's first appearance on television in the episode Love is a Science in 1959, and then the subsequent second wave of feminism in the early 60s, it's interesting to see how 10 years later, Velma Dinkley appears on television with the same genius as Zelda Gilroy, but minus the infatuation and that role of being a behind-the-scenes character.
You can't get away. My brain is too powerful.
Besides personality and intelligence, Zelda's wardrobe can also be seen as a point of inspiration for Velma's character design. Take this image for instance. Zelda is seen wearing a pleated skirt and a turtleneck sweater with her sleeves rolled up. Her hair is a dark brown and she sports bangs across her forehead. Overall, she has a well-dressed appearance but isn't fashion-forward compared to other more girly characters on the show who are seen as heartthrobs.
I don't want to be unkind, but you're not exactly a traffic stopper yourself.
Velma's design, by contrast, looks like the same look but with an updated 60s style. The knee-length pleated skirt is shortened into the popular miniskirt design, and to balance the outfit, she is given knee-high socks. Another possible inspiration for Velma is her voice actress, Nicole Gogill Jaff David. If you look at some images of Nicole, you can see that she sports a bob even in her later life, and there are many images of her online wearing a couple sweaters as well. So let's go on ahead to shoes. Now, shoes were a nightmare really for this project because no matter where I looked, I couldn't find what I needed. The reason why shoes happened first for the Velma costume is because I have to match her shoes to her skirt. And to do that, the easiest way will be to get the shoes first and then find a fabric that matches it with the same red, rather than having a fabric, make the skirt, and then suddenly have to find, which is less likely to find it right, find a shoes that match. Velma wears red Mary Janes with a low heel. Now the low heel part is what makes this very difficult because I scoured the internet trying to find the perfect shoe, even in the perfect shade of red as well, and I would get a lot of pinup girl shoes, so things that have 3-inch heels, 4-inch heels, or maybe they would be platforms, but like those chunky platform things, and they just never looked like right for the character because they were all too modern to pinup girl. So eventually what I decided to do was try to find vintage shoes. So I also scoured the internet for those, and that's very hard because I'm working with a person who has a very specific shoe size. So I have to find not only Mary Jane's, but in red, and her shoe size. So that took a couple of days to try to figure out if I could find it. But eventually on Etsy, I did find something, and those were some swing dance shoes. Now these are vintage and they are beautiful. They have like, I guess you could call it like a cherry red, but it's real leather, they're secondhand, and they came in this really, really pretty pink box. So without further ado, let's solve the mystery of the Velma Dinkley costume. Cause jinkies, it took a lot of work. So what I'm going to be doing now is I want to show you a comparison of the Pleats Samplers that I did. Now, although it may be hard to see at first, there is a difference between the two examples I have in front of you. One of them is box pleats, and the other one is knife pleats. It's a little bit hard to tell exactly what type of pleat Velma has because of the way the animators drew them. And if you look at the 60s, we see that both styles of pleats were popular. However, it came down to a construction issue that made me determine why I was going to pick box pleats over knife pleats. As you can see, when knife pleats are curved around the form, they kind of want to pucker more. They're a little bit stiffer because they're only folded in one direction, and because of this, they don't look as pretty in my opinion. Box pleats, on the other hand, because they have been folded in on themselves in two different directions, they have a lot more motion to them. And because of this, they kind of wrap around the form better. So I'm gonna go ahead and go with box pleats for the Velma skirt. But I want to show you the third sampler I did for the Velma skirt. Now this is a box pleat sampler, but the box pleats are at 3 inches instead of the 2.5 inches that I had pleated before. Now I wanted to experiment with this because I wanted to show you the difference in the size and also see myself visually proportionately how big I want these to be. Because I think the biggest problem with determining what to do for the pleated skirt is how wide to make these pleats. In the end, I decided that the 3-inch pleats were a little bit too cartoony and large, and that the 2.5-inch pleats looked a lot better. So this is the range and size I'm going to be using when I make the pleats. To start off with Velma's skirt, I had to first figure out how many pleats she had in her skirt. So I looked at the animation of the original 1969 version of Velma, and I started counting exactly how many pleats could be seen on each side of her turnaround. I found that majority of the time, Velma can be seen with 7 pleats drawn at different angles. So I added this up to be 14 pleats, minus 2 because those are the 2 that are going to be at her hips, so that they're the same pleat that you're counting. And that left me with 12 pleats in total. Now to curate the skirt for Velma, I needed to know the hip measurement and the waist measurement of my model. And the reasons why I need to know the natural waist measurement is because in this time period, a lot of things are high-waisted. So we know for a fact, because of the high-waistedness of the time, that Velma's skirt is going to reach at her waist. With that in mind, I went ahead and drew up some designs figuring out how the skirt can work. I didn't want the pleats to go all the way up to the waistband, meaning a 1-inch waistband, because then that would create a lot of bulky pleats underneath the sweater, and I thought that would be a little bit unflattering. So instead, I went with a design where the waistband was a lot thicker, and the pleats would start at the hip measurement instead of the waist. This overall would create a more smooth design of the skirt underneath the sweater and keep bulk from happening. So with the design in mind and knowing all the measurements that I wanted to do for the skirt, I went ahead and started calculating how wide the pleats were going to be. So you may have saw me do this with the sampler, but basically what I am doing is I am thread marking along the lines that I drew, that is on the inside of the material. And in the end, it's going to look like what happened on the sampler, which is on one side we'll have very long threads, which I can follow and use as guides when pleating the material so that all my pleats are nice and even. And on the other side we have smaller stitch lengths, which gave way to the longer ones. So eventually all of this material right here, which you can see is all rolled up right now, is going to turn into something that is pleatable. create the waistband of the skirt, I went ahead and drafted a pattern, and then once I was sure that pattern was going to work, I grabbed some interfacing, ironed it onto the fabric itself, sewed one of the side seams, ironed that flat, and then sewed and ironed flat the lining fabric, which is not interfaced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sandwich these two pieces together and sew on that top seam. But before I do that, I'm going to serge down the edges so I don't have a sandwiching effect in the seam. So it's going to leave it a little bit more flat and release bulk. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and understitch my waistband. So what that means is on the wrong side, I'm going to do a stitch that is right up close, maybe 1/8 or less away from the front of the waistband, so that when I iron this like this, it'll want to stay nice and smooth and not really bubble up. So as you can see, there's actually 13 panels here instead of 12. And I put that additional panel because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut this in half, meaning making this 2 separate pieces. Because what I want to do is I want to have enough room at the edge of both sides of the skirt to sew it up as a triangle. And what that should do is give me more of an A-line shape. So I'm going to make the triangles about 2 inches. And as you see later on, the pleated skirt is going to get inserted at this bottom edge right here and then tucked inside. So I am a bit frustrated right now.
Bit frustrated. You were raging at the zipper.
So what's happening is I want all of these little pieces I'm doing that involve like zippers with the closure method to have like this fun contrasting zipper. So like for instance, like Daphne would have like a purple or a pink one, and Shaggy a green one, and Velma obviously a yellow one. But you see this machine right here? See that beautiful little antique? She doesn't want to turn on, and she is the only one with a proper zipper foot. And this old gal who's falling apart on me, this plastic thing.
I love that the antique one is the one with the working zipper foot, and this old gal is already falling apart.
And that thing does not have the right zipper foot. So I tried at first to sew this very tragically on, but the reason why all my life my zippers have come out as poop is because that zipper foot is utter trash. So I'm going to ignore this for now and finish the hem. I really wanted to finish the skirt today, but it looks like it's not gonna happen until I get that stupid machine to run right. Any last words, Monty?
Don't do drugs.
So because the zipper on Monty's skirt is not working, I'm gonna go ahead and seam rip to about right here, right below, about 1 inch below the bulk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and seam rip this open, fix something that I left behind, which is I left the bulk in the seam here when I should have cut down like half of the seam allowance here so that it would smooth out better. And then also what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this open, because this is folded over, remember? So have it open like this, then sew it down, and then close off the zipper on top, and hopefully that might reduce some of the bulk. At least I'm hoping it will. I'm saying hoping a lot, but that's because I'm a bit, what's the word? Exasperated? Is exasperated the word? It has been quite a battle, but finally I have gotten this zipper installed and working and past this point right here where the bulk is. And all that's left for the skirt is to shorten and close off the zipper, take out the basting, and give it a good iron. And without further ado, here is the finished skirt along with the wig that we're going to be using for the Velma costume. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Now this is part 1 of the Velma Dinkley costume, so please make sure to stay tuned and watch out for the next video that is coming. And that video will be all about my friend Amantia knitting the Velma sweater, as well as me dyeing the socks to match and get the perfect shade of orange. So till then, I'll see you soon.